Welcome to another episode of Clear Lake Connections, where we talk to the people behind the businesses and brands of Bay Area Houston. We are proudly sponsored by UTMB Health. We're going to mix things up a little today. I have one of my coworkers, Taylor Hebert. He is our Chief Experience Officer. And he, about 5 or more years ago, told me that we needed to do a podcast. And I said, yeah, that's hard.
You resisted it.
I did. And now I do this podcast, and he doesn't let me live it down, but he saw the writing on the wall and that podcasts would become a big thing. Tell me about that. When did you realize that podcasting was going to, turn into what it has?
I think it was just seeing the way that people began to consume media and began to consume content, and also just the way that people are connected. And what the internet's done is really allow people to choose, good and bad, what information they want to consume. And the podcast seemed like that was the most direct way to get information to people. So,
yeah, and I personally, it's been a lot of fun doing the podcast. And I think I'm going to take you up on your offer, and we're going to try to get something going at work on a separate project. But
don't edit that part out. We need that commitment.
Okay. So tell me about your role here, Chief Experience Officer.
Well, actually, I started with the company. You hired me.
I
did. 16 years ago. It'll be 17 years in July.
Wow.
Probably the best or maybe the worst decision you've ever made. So I started as a part-time teller, and then I've done a lot of different roles here. I've worked in IT. I've managed a call center. I did some mortgage lending. I was our sales and service manager. And so my role now is I'm a Chief Experience Officer. So a big focus of mine is developing strategic initiatives for the credit union, also our expansion. So procuring real estate deals, working with our builders to build the actual branches themselves. And so that's a big part of what I do now.
And you finished a big project this year.
We did. We opened up a branch in Katy. It was the week of Thanksgiving. So that puts us out there on the west side of town. And we're looking at expanding within the Houston area, and then eventually we'll be looking at expanding outside of the Houston area into what we refer to as the Texas Triangle. So Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth area.
Now you grew up, and you're a product of CCISD. Tell me about, kind of your childhood and what it was like growing up in the Clear Lake area.
So I was born in Louisiana. My dad was transferred here in 1989. I was 6 years old. And so from first grade through 12, I was in Clear Creek ISD schools. So grew up in League City, attended Clear Creek High School, and I didn't realize how good CCISD was until I started hearing what other people experienced in school districts around. And not knocking those school districts, it just showed that CCISD was exceptional. And it kind of created a bias where I thought all school districts were that good.
And I knew you went to Clear Creek, so I had to make sure that we didn't have a Go Falcons moment.
Go Falcons.
So you've lived here, and so you talked a little bit about, I did hire you, and it wasn't a mistake. I doubled down. I hired your brother too.
That's right.
And he's still with us too.
Yep.
And so
thank you, by the way.
Yeah, no, those were good hires. You talked a little bit about like your career progression here. What's been your favorite part? Or what's your favorite part of this organization in particular?
Yeah, so I would say that the thing I enjoy the most about the credit union is knowing that I work for a company that's the ownership model is a cooperative model. So meaning the members that use the credit union also own the credit union. They also run the credit union in the form of a board of directors. So for me, it's knowing that I work for a not-for-profit cooperative that specifically is focused on meeting the financial needs of educators and their families. So that's probably my favorite aspect of the job.
Yeah, because you and I have talked about that cooperative model, and in what happened last February with the power, you and I have talked about that cooperative model in parts of Texas, their infrastructure tends to be better because of that cooperative model.
Yes, much better. The cooperative model, I think it's one that works. You see it sometimes, obviously, with the credit unions and the banking world. A lot of people aren't even aware Ace Hardware is actually a cooperative. So I'm a big believer in that's an ownership structure that provides the best service, the best price products to its users or members or owners or customers, whatever you want to refer to them as. So,
what's been the most remarkable, in your opinion, the most remarkable portion of the credit union story? I mean, it's a $1.2 billion financial institution, which when I first started working here, I think it was 100 million, and just so.
When was that, Jamison? When did you first start working here?
1996.
Okay, 1996. So when I started working here in 2005, we were 200 million in assets. So if you do the math, 1996 we're in the 100s, 2005 we're in the 200s. It's 2022, and we are now 1.2 billion. So we've experienced accelerated growth in the last few years. But I think the question you're asking me is what's the most remarkable part of the credit union? And I would say that it's the reputation that we have within the community. That's not something that's achieved overnight. You can ruin it overnight, but to build it takes a really long time. And that's another thing that I think I'm really proud of that as well. To work for an organization that's committed to having that type of reputation, especially for educators. Because you don't see organizations lining up to do a whole lot for them, especially in today's climate.
Yeah, it's amazing. You show a little appreciation, and they act like it. Honestly, some of them it's the first time it's ever happened. Which is sad.
And it might be.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about something, but I don't really remember what it was.
Well, here, let me ask you some questions.
All right, we'll mix it up.
So, Jamison, you've done about 60 of these now?
60 some odd, yeah.
Who's been your favorite person to interview?
Oh, I don't know. Just so many different stories. They all have something interesting that's brought them to this area, or I did like one in particular because they brought samples of their
right,
and it was a couple, and it was the world famous daiquiris, and these folks just decided, they lucked into it kind of about how they got into business, but by all accounts they've put so much into it, and like I said, they brought free samples, and that was fun.
That'll win you over.
But no, they've all been great, and some of the doctors have been. It's been kind of, some of it was interesting because it synced up with what was going on in my personal life, like with my mom and stuff. We had different doctors on just by chance that I could totally relate to because of what was going on with my mom.
Sure.
So, interesting.
Can I ask more questions?
Feel free.
Okay. So over the years working with you, I've seen that you've devoted a lot of your time and volunteered extensively with the Clear Lake area. You've made a huge investment in the Clear Lake area with your time. So what is it about the area that you believe in so much?
I think as a region, it's been kind of cool over the years to see how we've become more diversified as far as industry goes, but it's such a great area with the lake and all that. It's got something for everybody, and the people are great. And I think a lot of what I've seen through my eyes has come through kind of the dedication that I've seen with Cindy and Sherry and their passion for this region, and I think that's contagious.
Yeah,
So I think that's a big part of it, and it's a great place to raise kids.
Yeah.
So, but I was going to ask, okay, you had mentioned something about building up that reputation.
Right.
And you've been a part of that because you've been with the Dickinson ISD Education Foundation. Almost all of our management level team have put in, I would say combined, over 150 years worth of serving on these boards and really making sure that we're in the schools. I've chaired the new teacher luncheon committee now for a few years, and but like you said, it takes time to build that up. What have been some of your better experiences in your volunteerism that you've had?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, the education foundations and the credit union, we've always been an active partner in those foundations and understanding like how important of a role that plays. Most of the education foundations are committed to funding the innovative teaching grants and scholarships. Like I know in Dickinson, for example, we're committed to funding scholarships for kids to go to a local community college that may have never had an opportunity to go to college otherwise. So understanding how important education is and how that's a key that can elevate people in their own life, but collectively that elevates the community as well. And understanding that there's a corollary there. The more you invest in the community, the more time you invest, the more dollars you invest in education, that lifts everybody up in the community. And I think sometimes that can get lost. So just being able to take part in that for so long, very proud of that as well. And just the credit union, we're serious about our commitment. We understand the community we serve, and we're dedicated. And the results are there. You see like hundreds of years collectively of experience serving on those foundations, thousands and thousands of dollars contributed. So it's something that we understand. With education, you're going to get out what you put in, and so people in the community need to take a more active role and take part in the process.
So, and you did mention our kind of reach might be extending beyond the Houston area. And so we've been going to some trade shows or conferences for educators outside of the Houston area. What's your experience been like at those events?
I think the scale of it was pretty impressive. We started the credit union, it started in 1948. So we actually just had our 74th anniversary last week. And when we first started, we served Pasadena. And then it extended into Harris County. And then it was all the counties that touch Harris County. And then in May of 2020, the credit union expanded to serve the entire state of Texas. So just understanding how large the scope is, the state of Texas, geographically massive. It's also a state that we have a booming economy, and we have thousands of people that continue to move here every single year. But going to those conferences, just seeing the diversity of the crowd as well. When you go to a conference and you see the conference is for school board and superintendent and administrative, and you see what an incredibly diverse group of people. The different regions that are within Texas being represented as well. It's just the vastness of it was pretty awe-inspiring, I guess, but also kind of intimidating. How do we best tap into that? So there's a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities there as well.
Yeah, being on the other side and being an exhibitor at a trade show, very different. Big learning curve.
Right.
But I'll never go to another conference as an attendee and look at the people that are the vendors and the people displaying. I'll never look at them the same way.
Yeah, you have sympathy and empathy for them now.
I have been on the other side.
Right.
It can be kind of brutal.
Right.
So anyway, any last words about the credit union, or do you have any last questions for me?
No, just appreciate you hiring me 16 years ago. It's been a pretty cool journey. I've also got to see you evolve with the credit union as well, so that's been interesting.
Eat crow about podcasts.
And eat crow about podcasts. I can't wait to get that started. I hope we really get something going. So I think there's a message there's a lot of information out there that we could share. The credit union, we're a full service financial institution. So I think there's a lot of room for people to grow their knowledge about what a credit union actually is, how it can benefit them. Obviously, I would always push people towards a credit union over a bank. But being a full-service financial institution, we're going to offer all the same products and services that a bank would offer, probably at a lower price than a bank would offer as well. And something else is we're committed to promoting financial literacy as well. I think that's probably one of the areas where people are the most underserved, is becoming financially literate. But there might be a stigma attached to that. I think that as a credit union, as an industry, that's a focus area of ours, is to promote financial literacy, and that's empowering for people, and that can really help them out in life.
Well, thanks a lot, Taylor.
Sure. Thank you for having me.